It's gut-wrenching when you get a call from a family that their daughter or even their son is missing, because you know that you've got precious time.
All week, we've been sharing stories of family and intimate partner violence, but it's important to acknowledge that one specific population is targeted at much higher rates. There's no way to even tell you how many Indigenous women, girls, and 2S individuals have been murdered or gone missing in this country overall, let alone behind closed doors. A national inquiry concluded no one knows the true number. As we set to mark the 2-year anniversary of that report, Canada still hasn't released a federal action plan to protect them.
We need to acknowledge it, that it was a genocide that's taken place, and we need to make those wrongs right.
It was race-based genocide. That's what the national inquiry into the disappearances and killings of missing and murdered Indigenous people concluded in 2019.
Violence is still persisting, and it's being elevated due to COVID. COVID-19 has increased the violence in the communities with our women, our girls, and again, our gender diverse.
The disrespect is incredible.
Connie Greyeyes is a MMIWG caseworker providing support for the families of missing and murdered loved ones who reach out to her when the unthinkable happens.
I would say about every 6 weeks.
And Connie has been in their shoes before. Many friends in her northern BC community were murdered or went missing. Her cousin Joyce killed in Edmonton.
She knocked on the wrong door and he decided that he might rob her, and decided after that he would beat her up, and he lit her on fire.
Inequities endured during years of residential school systems, colonialism, economic marginalization, systemic racism have lasting impacts, particularly in violence and trauma perpetrated against women and girls. And the data is startling. Numbers show 38% of women and girls killed in 2019 lived in remote, rural, and northern regions or small towns. Last year alone, 23 of the 155 women on Canada's femicide list identified as Indigenous. And according to NWAC, though they make up only 5% of all women in Canada, Indigenous women represent 14% of homicides.
Everything just kind of goes so slow, because nobody takes it seriously right away. When somebody goes missing, you need to start looking now. And you have to start caring.
The national inquiry concluded that thousands of deaths and disappearances have likely gone unrecorded over decades.
It took like pulling teeth out to say it was a genocide. Now that it's there, let's move on.
The report contained 231 strategic calls to end this violence, calling on our governments, industries, institutions, healthcare, child welfare, correctional services, and policing. We asked the Trudeau government when that action plan will be released. The government did not provide a date. However, they tell us they have introduced legislation and funding supports to address the root causes of this problem, saying this is a priority.
And until the systems that are designed to hold Indigenous people down are dismantled or changed in a meaningful way, we will continue to have issues with missing and murdered women, girls, boys, men, without justice.
Ahead on City News, a Canada-wide strategy confronting violence at home and beyond, and attitudes that turn a blind eye to a crisis that is claiming the lives of Indigenous peoples in Canada. If you are in immediate danger, call 911. If you are Indigenous and going through family or intimate partner violence, help is out there. Call any of the numbers on your screen right now or visit our website citynews.ca for a full list of resources.
It's painfully clear that there's two justice systems that are at work in Canada. And until we leverage that playing field and make it fair for all, we're going to continue to see this.
It's an acronym that highlights an epidemic of violence here in Canada, tied to an ugly history that persists decades later, behind closed doors and beyond. Indigenous women, girls, and 2S people face higher rates of violence than non-Indigenous individuals. A historic memorandum has been signed to address a national crisis that advocates say is worsening during the pandemic.
When you have a government that has taught its citizens how to treat us, it plays into it, like the disrespect is incredible.
Canada's colonialism has had devastating impacts on Indigenous peoples that can still be felt today. One of them detailed in the national inquiry into these deaths and disappearances across the country, saying there are serious reasons to believe that the actions and treatments of First Nations peoples, Inuit and Métis, amount to genocide.
Well, I'm human. I can't tell you what that feels like when a family calls you and their daughter is missing. I sat with families that found out that their child had been found, and the heartache and grief that you experience along with them.
The Canadian government still doesn't have a national action plan as we near the 2-year anniversary of the release of the inquiry. Violence has only persisted, experts adding it's been elevated during the pandemic, and many reserves don't have emergency shelters for those who need to flee.
Our centers are not as open due to COVID because we have the social distancing. If you're in a crisis situation, where are you going to go to?
Just recently, the Native Women's Association of Canada and the Moose Hide Campaign Development Society signed a historic memorandum committing to end violence against Indigenous women, girls, and gender-diverse people.
Men are the problem, and we need to look at the areas and resources that they can help.
The rate of intimate partner violence reported to police is 10 times higher in Indigenous communities, and family violence is 16 times higher. That disparity largely owing to higher rates of common assaults.
And the fact that the men are killing disproportionate number of Indigenous women in this country is something that has to change.
NWAC also notes that there is a lack of data, the numbers of missing and murdered. The grassroots campaign calls on men from all backgrounds to be part of the solution in addressing violence.
Organizations will support each other and work together to ensure that culturally appropriate programs are available to all Indigenous, to curtail the national tragedy.
Many families have had to live without answers for decades now, not knowing where their loved ones are and seeking justice for these senseless acts, and left to deal with this issue on their own.
What's to stop somebody from harming our women, girls, our men and boys when there's absolutely no repercussion for it?
Though some steps have been taken, Connie says elders have told them there's a long way to go. It will be generations before we see real change.
But I can say that I do have hope that more and more Canadians are starting to get educated and understand that systematic racism that happens, that plays into the actions or reactions that the public has when a woman goes missing or is murdered. That's a long ways away.
Connie recently garnered international attention over missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls following a chance encounter with Whoopi Goldberg. To hear that story and watch Whoopi reacting to a special gift Connie gave her, you can head to our website, citynews.ca. In Toronto, I'm Faiza Amin for City News. If you are in immediate danger, call 911. If you are Indigenous and going through family or intimate partner violence, help is out there. Call any of the numbers on your screen right now or visit our website, citynews.ca, for a full list of resources.